So hi everyone, my name is Molly. So I'll be running the Eastern Fuel Poverty Forum. I'm a project development manager at National Energy Action. I would ask if you could, it's lovely if people can keep cameras on, but in the inverse, keep themselves on mute. No problem, pressure if not, it's just nice for speakers to be able to see some faces. Although I will, full disclosure, say, I can't see anyone right now. I'm talking at a set of slides at the moment. So, Brian or anyone, if there's any problems, please just go off mute and let me know because I'm in the dark at the moment. But yeah, a bit of housekeeping. If you can pop yourself on mute, if you can keep your cameras at where possible. And the next bit, if you can, pop your name first and last if you're able to fit it, and your organization as your Zoom name. It just means that people know where you're coming from if you ask a question or if you post something. And it might mean it's easier if there is any kind of networking opportunities to link people up. Okay, so most of you already know this, and I'm sorry if you feel like you've heard this a million times before, but we do increasingly find with every forum that we have more and more people coming to NEA who have maybe just started on delivering fuel poverty advice or just getting into the sector, because it is a growing sector, maybe for all the wrong reasons at the moment, but it is an area of increasing interest. So National Energy Action is the national fuel poverty charity, and we work across England, Wales and Northern Ireland, have done so for 40 plus years. And our kind of raison d'etre is to ensure that people in the UK can afford to live in a warm and safe home. We work with the energy and water sectors, with frontline practitioners, companies, regulators, and the government. And all we want to do is make positive changes for customers in vulnerable circumstances. And our approach to fuel poverty spans all the way from an individual householder or bill holder right up to governmental policy and practice, and everything we do in the middle feeds into that. So in regards to the tight ship I said we're on to our agenda for today. So right now you are currently being welcomed by me, welcome. And there's a few updates that we want to give you from NEA's last year of work and what we're currently looking at, areas of interest across different parts of the country, different priority groups. So I'll give some updates on that. And then there will be a networking opportunity. Some of you did say that you were interested in providing kind of short form updates, so you'll be called upon to do so. Hopefully you remember doing that from when you signed up. But don't worry, they're very casual. We're just here to see what everyone's up to and hopefully get a bit more information about different bits of work. Then at 10:20, Matt Copeland, our head of policy and public affairs, will give a policy update and look at kind of our strategic priorities for the year going forward and what we've achieved so far. Then we'll have a comfort break going for about 10 minutes up until 11 o'clock. Because don't you hate it when someone books something in all morning, they don't factor in a little bit of a break. And when we come back after that break, we've got 3 excellent speakers who are going to talk about different types of projects kind of across the region, and we talk a little bit about what they've learned, the context setting of where we are right now. We'll do a quick roundup and we'll conclude at 12 noon, hopefully as close to as possible so you can all go and get some lunch immediately afterwards. So in terms of NEA's work over the last year and what we've achieved, I mean, just like many of you on this call, our demand for our services has been unprecedented in the last year. So many of you know we run our Warm and Safe Homes helpline, which operates across England and Wales, and we support people with energy and income maximisation advice through that helpline service. So since it began 2-3 years ago, the demand each year has increased massively, and no more so than last year. We had over 16,000 calls that were answered through our phone lines. We also made use of our new web chat function for 465 conversations with clients and over 3,000 online referrals to our different schemes. From those numbers, 11,151 clients were helped with energy advice and support. And our income maximisation team supported 1,872 clients, And the resultant claims that were made off the back of this were about 3.5 million in expected financial gains. I always think that number's gonna bottom out at some point, and we're gonna reach maximize, pun intended, maximization. We never seem to, which just goes to show how much there still is to do in the sector around raising awareness, making people know what they're entitled to and how to apply. We ourselves administered over 734,700. Sorry, I struggle with big numbers. In crisis funds, hardship, bill support, and debt relief that all came from our various schemes through NEA. And as probably won't be much of a surprise, over 60% of clients supported had more than one health condition, which was, for most of them, the reason that they primarily got in touch with NEA, because they were worried about that intersection between health and energy that we are also worried about. Luckily, this is a summer forum, but we are always thinking about the next winter and what clients will need to kind of face that. So these are just kind of 1 to 2 line updates that we have, some case studies from people we've worked with. I think it's important to say, in the context of these successes, which are lovely, is that, these are our big wins, and we didn't have all big wins. We had lots of cases which, didn't achieve everything we wanted to. We're struggling in a really difficult situation at the moment, as you'll all know. So as with all this brilliant bit of work, I just want to highlight that, we really do acknowledge that there is a lot of pain out there, and how much we want to support that. I'll just say, from my experience, one of the schemes I found most useful that we were able to support with clients this year was our winter support packs. So being able to offer something tangible to clients around keeping warm at home, and making small scale measures, and hopefully that will be available next year as well. So just looking at our operational work programme for the coming year. So we're really interested in looking at communities of interest and underrepresented groups, so people we targeted and know that are vulnerable. So our Warm Welcome scheme ran last year, so some of you may be aware of it, but it provides energy advice and support to new and expectant parents in England and Wales, normally with those children sort of slightly below the age of 5. And it aims to sort of capture people at that point where resilience might be low and energy costs might be going up, also happen to be in conjunction with actual energy costs rising across the board, and give them some idea about energy efficiency and support services. So to do that, we worked in community centres, children's centres, baby banks, mums coffee mornings, dad support groups, all across the community, to give targeted advice, and also to work with the professionals who then work with that client group to give them training and support. We have our work that we'll be doing with National Grid around building community resilience. And this is to help us refocus our energy on in-community work, look at communities who've been marginalised and struggle not only to get help from their energy company, but also potentially help from the advice sector, and look at what we can do to remove those barriers that they face in the energy market. So this is going to be tailored, localised work, which really understands community need and then proactively puts in place remedies to increase capacity across the sector, which is really desperately needed at the moment. Our Empowered by Energy programme is a unique offer that supports newly recognised refugees to overcome language barriers, understand new energy systems and save monies. It's a really excellent programme, and if you can imagine how much we have to think backwards from our current understanding, what we might deliver to someone who's never interacted with the UK energy market or being a domestic UK householder, and what information they need to equip themselves to be able to flourish in that market. So we have interactive, in-depth workshops which are supported by translator services, and they cover a range of energy-related topics and advice, which have been delivered both online and face-to-face. And the best part of the programme is that the rewards are not just for those who are in the room or on the Zoom call, but that those people can become community champions and pass on the learnings amongst their respective communities. We've continued to work with Smart Energy Great Britain, which we've been working with since 2016. Some of you on this call have previously been recipients of the grant giving programme, and essentially it aims to work to support partners to help myth bust with their local communities around smart meters and talk about some of the benefits that they can provide. And this is done through a funded relationship of support. So this year, for the 2023 funding, we're aiming to look at people in fuel poverty, those who lack digital skills, and people who are carers, as kind of having particular vulnerabilities in understanding smart meters and what benefits they can bring. On top of the actual work we do with partners, we also work to jointly create resources for Smart Energy Great Britain. So if you go on the website, those are resources that you can access and make use of in advice giving circumstances or with clients. So as part of our work for the VCMA, or the Vulnerability and Carbon Monoxide Allowance, this is a funding allowance for all gas distribution networks, which is allocated and managed by Ofgem. And basically it's allocated according to the GDN's customer base. We're currently working in partnership with Cadent, Wales and West Utilities and SGN to deliver these programmes. And they cover advice such as appliance repair, energy and water advice, benefits advice, fuel debt relief, and of course, emergency fuel vouchers. And the focus really is looking at reducing the risks related to carbon monoxide and of course the wider advice given that we can do around vulnerability. So our Cadent One Number programme again has been running for a number of years and continues to go ahead. So referrals are generated by engineers attending an emergency call out, sometimes in people's homes, and they're carrying out mains replacement work. So they're trained and given information how to spot vulnerabilities with clients and can refer those customers who are in vulnerable situations. So in the Eastern and North London networks, they refer to NEA, and they are also referred to groundwork in other areas of the country. Those householders who are identified and then referred through are offered free gas appliance repair and replacement or a free gas appliance service, subject to our eligibility, energy and water advice, and also benefit entitlement check. So it's a really good way to find people that might otherwise not referral routes, but who are actually experiencing kind of the top end of being on the of having low allergy resilience. Healthy Homes, Healthy People is our partnership approach with Wales and West Utilities. Again, it offers much of what we give through our typical energy advice offering, talking about priority services register, water tariffs, but we also offer heating upgrades, home adaptation, information and pass on, and looks at things like carbon dioxide and home safety measures that you can do at home. We have our collaboration between Cadent and SGN, so that's energy advice and water advice for SGN and Cadent customers. Again, just another way to capture people who might be in touch with one part of the sector, but not with the advice giving sector. So we've been able to support with energy debt support, priority services, but also emergency fuel top-ups through those customer area codes. And then we can link support on, so whether that's through our benefit team, referrals to local food banks, network operators, carbon monoxide alarms, or look at measures projects for insulation, heating and controls. Right, that was a bit of a whistle stop. I'm actually quite aware that it was a whistle stop, but it's very hard when you can't see anybody's face. I also know we've got two people who are planning to speak a little bit, but need to leave early. So hopefully I've managed to do that in enough time. So I'm going to stop sharing so we can actually see each other's faces and ask if everyone I've got a list of people, and I've tried to spread them roughly around the region so that we didn't have too many from one area. We did get a wide range and also by first come, first serve. But Sean, are you here? Could you provide the first update?
Hi, Molly. Hi, everyone. Yes,
I'm still here.
Yeah. Thank you for squeezing me in. Yeah, I know that I've got to shoot off at 10 o'clock, but I'll be back just after 11 to catch up. Good morning, everyone. By way of quick introduction, I'm Sean James. I'm one of the senior public health managers working across Cambridgeshire County Council and Peterborough City Council, One of my many hats is to strategically lead on the Stay Well This Winter network. The aim of the network is simply just to mitigate and minimise the risks associated with cold weather on the health and well-being of our most vulnerable. And I say simply, I don't know why I've put that in there, because it's absolutely nothing like that whatsoever. It's a network which is led by Public Health, and we work with many partners across our local health and social care system. We are about, I think last time counted, around about 37, 38 organisations strong, and that covers everything from our city and county councils, our district councils, our blue light services, right through to our local NHS, our charity, and a raft of charities that are working with anyone at a frontline service with those with suffering or at risk of living in cold homes and fuel poverty. We're an evidence-based model, which means that we have to be compliant with NICE guidance, for example. So I think the one that pretty much dictates what we do is the excess winter deaths and illnesses, I can't remember the rest, and health risks associated with cold homes, I believe it is. So we very much have to be compliant with that, especially from a public health point of view. We have to make sure that we are using public money that we put into it as effectively and as efficiently as we can do, but also making sure that the model that we use is also not only efficient, but also effective at delivering affordable warmth to those who are coming through our particular services. Being public health, you won't be surprised to know that we need our local data as well. So it's something that we call framing the need in Cambridgeshire and Peterborough. So we look at a variety of public data that's available, and from that we're able to drill down almost to a postcode level the number of houses living in number of houses experiencing fuel poverty, and from that then we can work up local targeted data that we can send our services and part of the network into those areas, so we can almost target resources at a street level to make sure that those who are extremely vulnerable are aware of the service and also being supported through the service as well. So therefore we know that we're trying our best. Instead of taking a generic blanket approach, we take a very much a targeted approach. And to do that, we do it in two ways. We have a home-centered approach. So we look at the house to start with. So things like looking at personal plans for the cheapest tariff on flexible payment plans, eco retrofit, new boilers, first-time central heating, fire safety, housing options for older people, just to name a few. And then once our services, our members of the network have done that, we'll then look at the person as well and see if they're available for further support. So networking them in with if they're a military veteran or their families of a veteran that's passed, they're eligible for certain and additional funds. If they're a carer, if they're terminally ill, if they experience loneliness. A recent one through the Cambridgeshire Fire and Rescue Services, if they're a hoarder and that presents certain risks, then they're eligible for further support. So we, as we said, we take the household, we take the house itself, then we look at the person or the family as well to make sure that we are really taking a broad spectrum of what they might be at risk. And those working in this field won't be surprised to know that there are a raft of at-risk groups who can experience through cold weather and winter conditions the effects of upon their health and well-being right across the life course. A few of the newest ones that we've found through targeting are those who are experiencing suicidal thoughts, terminally ill, and we had at a recent workshop Anglia Ruskin University come along and identify students as being at risk, which none of the members that we'd had actually thought about. And in my mind, we kept thinking about students being typical 18 to 21-year-olds. And actually, when we started looking at the data along with local universities, we found that over a third to half of the student population were mature students. So those with families, those with mortgages, those with bills. So we quickly were able to realise that there was a cohort of people who we hadn't really considered, and a lot of our resources weren't available to student populations. So part of the work that's going on with our network at the minute is to sort of take an inwards look at ourselves and say, well, what is available to those if we were to badge students or mature students as a possible as a now identified at-risk group moving forward. And the benefit of doing that with the Stay Well referral, we will have privacy notices with each member. So therefore we can share data. So once one member is referred or household is referred in by one of our organizations, that organization then can go into the house, they can look at identify other areas of the house or through conversation that ring alarm bells, and they can directly refer into another member organization such as Age UK, who then might refer into Cambridgeshire Fire and Rescue, who might then refer into Carer Network. So one referral really does trigger a cascade of holistic support that is available. And the wonderful thing I like about it is that the onus isn't on the person who's in crisis or the family that's in crisis to do the doing. All our members go in and they'll do the work in with approval, but with that individual, with that family in the know at all times. So given that that they may be experiencing poor mental health, for example, in crisis, having to deal with maybe 5 or 6 different organizations to get the support is taken off them. That weight is removed, and we do the doing for very much for them. And one of those things that they can do is get access to our public health funded annual winter grant, and we put in roughly 100,000 to almost 200,000 every year into this grant, which they can apply for with regards to small home repairs to improve energy efficiency, to reduce costs, and to make sure that they are in a resilient position for the winter to come in. And that's purely from public health, yet alone the other raft of support that's available through our 37 members. And I have no idea when I started, but I think I'll leave it there. But I can put my email into the chat. So if anyone would like to learn more about the Stay Well network and how we try to do our best to make sure that those who are in crisis, living in cold homes or experiencing fuel poverty, can get the resources they need, by all means, drop me an email or ask Molly to pass my details on. And I'm more than happy to have a chat with you, either on Teams or if you're fairly local-ish, we'll drive out and have a coffee. It's always nice to do face-to-face. But thank you for your time, and thank you for the opportunity of just giving a brief overview, Molly.
No, that's fab. Thank you. And you took the words out of my mouth. If any of our speakers or anyone who isn't speaking, because we do have a full list today, wants to drop in their name, email address into the chat, because some people have already kind of started to do that, then please do and pick those up on the chat and hopefully take them away. All right, thanks so much for coming. I know you have to shoot off as well today, so thank you for squeezing this in. Shivani, I'm also aware that you might need to head off shortly. Have you got time for a quick update?
I have, yes. Sorry, let's get my video back on. Morning, everyone. Sorry that I'm having to make this short and sweet. So I'm Shivani and I'm from National Gas. We've been working with NEA for a while now, and I mean, just hearing some of the things that Sean's mentioned and, you know, the stuff that Molly's mentioned this morning is just absolutely fantastic. And hopefully we can help to promote some of the work, but also allow more and more people to be properly advised and have the resources that they need. And as part of that, what we'd like to do is offer some training locally to, I guess, people that are near our projects, impacted by our projects, but beyond that as well. And we've sort of sent out some invites to local councils, just offering up these training places, and we haven't really had much of a response. And I guess that's partly just building that relationship. And that's where Molly sort of suggested it might be really good to maybe pitch what we can offer at this forum, which I think would be great to make some contacts and network. But the other thing that I think would be fantastic to understand is how we can kind of better promote that in the areas that we're particularly working in. So we do have some criteria that we need to meet. So our spend has to be within a certain area of the project and the impact, just because we are regulated. But in saying that, I think the more people we can help, the better. Since we had the last conversation with Molly, we have had some good conversations with the local council, so East Lindsey District Council, near one of our sites in Hatton. They're actually working to promote almost like a vehicle, a roadshow that will allow them to engage with rural communities. I think this will be a great fit. So if we can put something in where that training could take place on this vehicle, I think that'd be a great way to engage with people. I think the aim is to try and improve things like digital skills for people, to also to leave a bit of a legacy, to allow people to sort of have that information and knowledge, and to be able to sort of have that ripple effect of allowing more and more people to understand where they can benefit from that that information as well. So that's sort of, we're at very early stages at the moment, but lots that's happening. One of our other projects, Western Gas Network, is connecting the LNG port over in Milford Haven in Wales, and connecting up into the main national transmission system. So we're working along that route between Wales and the Midlands. That's another area that we'd really like to work with. We're starting a bit more engagement as the project kicks off in September this year, and we are looking to do some community fun days that Molly's involved in as well. So I think another opportunity to potentially speak to local people, residents, people that are being hit by the issues that we've discussed this morning. So if anyone wants to reach out and find out a bit more about what we'd like to do in this space and maybe help us shape that, please do get in touch. And I think that's pretty much it from me, Molly, unless there's anything else you'd like to add.
No, I think that's perfect. If you're happy to put your email address, I know there's 2 minutes until you needed to head off, but that means if anyone has any ideas or wants to reach out, just means people can get in touch afterwards. All right, we've got a lot of speakers that I'm hoping we can get to. So Gary from Suffolk County Council has sent us apologies, but he did say Chris Musset, that would be able to stand in for him. I hope I'm not throwing anyone under the bus here. Chris, are you here?
Hi. Yes, I am. Hi, Molly.
Hi.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm going to give a very short intro, as Gary couldn't be here, sends apologies about that. So my name is Chris Musset. I'm from Suffolk County Council. In Suffolk, we have a consortium of local, that's formed of the districts and boroughs to provide support for energy retrofit for households. So at the moment we have LAD 3, which we received an extension of funding for, which now means tools down at the end of September, so that will be coming to a close. So far we have had 207 installs or energy retrofits, and a further 91 booked in between now and September, which is a mix of external wall insulation, loft insulation, cavity wall and solar PV as part of that mix. And the spend to date on LAD 3 is about 1.6 million, and the total spend on LAD to date is about 3.5 million to date so far. So as the closure of LAD 3 comes in, we've received about 8.6 million in HUG 2 funding, which will be spread across Suffolk. That aims to support about 410 homes for energy retrofits and for energy efficiency and clean heat measures as well. And tomorrow we've got the launch of our campaign as part of a refresh of Warm Homes Suffolk, of which we're releasing a press release to gain traction and raise the profile of the support available through HUG 2 and Warm Homes Suffolk. And in addition, we're launching a toolkit for our partners and stakeholders as well, which will go out tomorrow additionally. So if you'd like to be added to that list and want to find out a bit more about Warm Homes Suffolk, please do let us know. We can be visited if you type in warmhomesuffolk.org into your browser as well. It's also worth mentioning we've had a few issues with, I guess, the startup of HUG. Mainly in the change around of the way the measures have to be implemented compared to other schemes like LAD 3, and the front loading of what DESNZ calls grade A measures. that means that a certain number of measures have to be attained and kind of front loaded before other measures like solar PV can be installed. And that's caused a slight, I guess, delay in the rollout of a range of measures across the county because of that front loading kind of mechanism. It's something that I believe other recipients of HUG2 funding have had all as well across England. So yeah, it's just something to kind of mention. Yeah, that's a very short summary. Please check out Warm Home Suffolk. I believe the colleague Claire has helpfully put that in the chat. I've got my details in the chat if anybody has any questions about that. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Chris. So the next person I'm going to ask, who did offer, not just asking, is Ian Anderson from MK Money Lifeline. Particularly, I thought because the energy advice sphere and the debt sphere is becoming, well, a smaller and smaller Venn diagram, let's say. Are you here, Ian, to give a bit of an update?
I am, yes.
Thanks,
Hi,
Ian.
Molly.
Hiya.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, so I'm from a debt advice charity in Milton Keynes, MK Money Lifeline. We deal principally with debt, but everything else that comes our way as well, particularly through drop-ins. And energy is one of the key groups of advice that we give now, as well as benefits. And last winter, a couple of things really. We were fortunate to have a lot of warm homes grant, and we had £3,000 that we divided into £49 vouchers that we were able to give away to people with repayment meters. Really helpful. And but we find that people come to us with a whole manner of energy issues, mostly because they've just fallen into arrears from the last winter. And pretty much everybody I've seen at our drop-in is who's got energy arrears of one form or another. And that's manageable to a certain extent with the summer, but we're going to head back into the winter, and the problems we've had are going to be replicated, doubled. And I'm not sure what the way out through this is. One of the things we have been doing is, it was quite interesting to hear the Warm and Safe Homes, the WASH helpline. That was really interesting, actually. I've made a note of that. We give energy advice, things like using a slow cooker. And so we got people, we were actually able to donate a slow cooker only this week. So yeah, it's a problem for us, and it's a problem for all of us. And I'm not sure exactly what this winter is going to be like. We're just praying for a mild one, really. But that's where we are, really. Thank you.
I will definitely join you in that, Ian, praying for a mild winter. Just to say as well, when anyone's putting their information in the chat, if you have any calls to action, or you're looking for certain types of partners to work with, or you're looking for referral routes, whatever it may be, do put all that in the chat. I think it, to replicate proper networking on Zoom is an imperfect art, but by all means, put the information you're looking for out there. Okay. Caroline Mackinson, I saw you before, but I can't see everybody now. Are you here to provide a quick update?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
Thanks, Caroline. Yes, can hear you.
Sorry, the internet's doesn't seem to be very good today, so I do apologise if I get cut off. So for the last couple of years, I've been coordinating a Norfolk-wide Norfolk Warm and Wise project, energy advice project, and just some kind of findings really. So it was funded through Energy Redress and aimed at vulnerable households. And more than I think 60% of the clients identified as having long-term health conditions. Obviously, the huge change in 2 years from the start of the project, when we were kind of helping people with things like energy switching, to obviously seeing the price just go through the roof. And switching obviously became not an option because there just weren't the deals out there. So there's really limited ways, obviously, to help people save money. I think one of the big frustrations the team have found is around energy suppliers, particularly things like meter readings. And so often when we're seeing people come to us with arrears, particularly when it's only energy arrears, it is because of the lack of meter readings and estimated bills. And it just becomes such a nightmare when someone's, you know, they're regularly paying, but obviously they're not always paying enough. And that adjustment, and we found that even with people with smart meters, you know, they can be making a regular payment, but their bills are not calibrated often enough to account for their overall use. So I'm thinking of a case study of a single parent who was basically topping up £60 a month, which a couple of years ago was probably just about okay. He was in a very small flat, but he's moved into a property, didn't really understand how the heating worked, and before he knew it, he was using a lot more than what had been estimated. He did have a smart meter. We managed to get him a smart meter in-house display because the previous tenant had taken it, and energy companies do not automatically reissue in-house displays, which is quite frustrating often. And yeah, so he had his immersion on all the time. He hadn't realised how much he was using. Fortunately, we managed to get him an E.ON grant to help pay off his debt. So yeah, meter readings and difficulties really trying to resolve. As much as possible, we try to empower the clients to try and get as much information for us as they can. When we're having three-way conversations with energy suppliers, often trying where possible. Obviously, there's language barriers and other barriers, but often trying to encourage them to have the conversation with our support so that they feel more empowered in the future to kind of cope with the situation. But yeah, just very, very frustrating amount of time trying to resolve billing issues with energy suppliers, you know, issues with meters not working and those kind of things. So very time consuming. And another thing really, I mean, we've managed to, I think we recorded over 200,000 in financial outcomes during the last couple of years for our clients, which actually probably doesn't even account for all of them because we haven't always got that information. But really, those people who absolutely needed the help the most always seem to be the ones who are the last in line. So when it came to the council tax money, you know, a lot of clients who didn't have a regular direct debit with the energy supplier, with the council, didn't automatically get their money going into their bank account, so had to apply. Often they weren't online, and obviously if they also had a debt with their council tax, they might have been a bit reluctant to be in touch with the council. So it just kind of, and certainly with the energy bill support scheme, you know, we've supported a lot of clients who don't have a direct relationship with their supplier. So we've got the park homes, we've got people in caravans, we've got people in flats, we've got quite there's sort of clustered areas, certainly in Yarmouth, Kings Lynn, Thetford, quite deprived areas with quite a lot of people who are paying a landlord and often having to pay for a prepaid top-up from a particular shop, rather than, so they can't always access the emergency support that we can offer. So we've, you know, helped a lot of people with fuel vouchers over the last few years, but often those people are not getting their emergency support, and they're not easily able to access the energy support vouchers as well. So, and often, you know, vouchers arriving in the wrong name because the accounts, particularly for people on prepaid meters, energy suppliers just don't seem to provide the regular billing, or maybe not required to provide the level of billing that they were before. But certainly we've encouraged a lot of people, certainly since the price change, to ask for paper bills if they want it in black and white. And often bills are really hard to understand. And we were, sometimes we'll be sitting there and it takes several of us looking at a bill and you're thinking, well, you know, so how can an illiterate client even begin to start to understand, you know, some of the information they're being sent? So yeah, I would say that energy suppliers have not made it easy for people to get in touch with them, particularly for those people who are digitally excluded. So yes, very time consuming. And a big part of what we have found ourselves doing over the last year is looking at other options beyond energy. So making recommendations for people around local support, As a service, we've just recently joined the Nourishing Norfolk network. So we are looking to set up a food hub at our office in Diss, because we realise with the cost of living crisis, the demand for sort of emergency cost of living support is huge. And there is a limited amount we can often do once people have kind of reached their maximum number of fuel vouchers, or if they're in a property where the heating is going to cost a lot of money and they're not necessarily in a position to move. So yeah, lots of challenges, but lots of demand, huge demand. So we are hoping to get further funding. We've got funding now for this Nourishing Norfolk project, but we're also hoping to continue the energy advice, because we've hardly promoted anything. We've had loads of referrals, and we've had to keep closing the referrals through the Norfolk Community Advice Network just because demand is so high. I think that's pretty much it.
Thank you, Caroline. Definitely do put your name in the chat, and you know, maybe there is someone who knows something we can help with engender that. And I definitely relate to the energy bill support scheme, particularly in these kind of final months. There's been some sort of challenges, and just making sure that most vulnerable do get a hold of them. Lee Fairbrother, are you here? I feel like I'm picking on people in class, but at one point you did say you were happy to speak.
I did, yes, I am here. Sorry.
Brilliant, hi Lee.
Good morning, Molly. How are you?
I'm good, thanks.
Cool. Yes, so we've done previous projects working in the East, and I wanted to reconnect. So my name is Lee Fairbrother. I'm from Qbot. We are a installer of underfloor insulation, and we work with social housing providers for about the last 10 years on a range of projects across the UK. We did a lot of work with Flagship Victory most recently, and we're involved in a number of HUG and LAD funded schemes, as well as SHBF too. The focus is all around reducing the demand for heat through improving insulation, which obviously therefore has a positive net impact on reducing energy bills. And we've just launched, or we're in the process of launching, a new analysis tool to help identify those homes that are most likely to be suitable for the measure and eligible for funding. And we're entering into a trial with E.ON around GBIS scheme, the Great British Insulation Scheme. Now, we have a massive database of private homeowners from the able to pay market that come to us. So recruiting those for the scheme is not a challenge. However, we don't have so much direct interaction with those people that fall into the low income categories. So the reason I want to speak today was to appeal to those of you that are dealing with people that are potentially able to qualify for the Great British Insulation Scheme under the low income scheme, and if we can connect to help find some people that would potentially benefit from having funded measures for their property. So it's specific to underfloor insulation, but I'll pop my email into the chat, and do feel free to connect with me, anybody that thinks they might have people that would be eligible for the scheme. Thanks very much for your time.
Perfect, thanks Lee, that's great. Okay, so do we have, I can't see his name, Harriet Robinson from Huntingdon District Council. Harriet, or anyone else from Huntingdon District Council who wanted to give an update?
Harriet's not in the room.
Yeah, okay. Well, no bother. All right, that's fine. David Livesley, I did see you before from Cambridge City Food Bank. I've lost everyone now. David, are you still here?
Yeah.
Hi, David.
Well, we're just at the end of dealing with crises, and I think the thing I can most hopefully contribute is the scale. So in the last 12 months, our support for local people referred to us has been an expenditure of the order of £110,000 over the last 12 years on over £2,049 vouchers, which we purchased from Cherish grants. The funding for this has come entirely from donations from local people to the Cambridge City Food Bank, which is the organisation for whom I'm the volunteer who runs this scheme. So the need is there, the intuitive understanding, because we don't actually have to campaign to raise funds, that people are in need in the community, and that those who have should help out through organizations like the Food Bank is self-evident. The people to whom we give these vouchers are referred to us by about a dozen referral agencies in the local community. And although there is a limit to the number of vouchers that we give, we never refuse a voucher without interrogating the agency to ensure that on the particular day that the request is made, the agency doesn't have evidence from the client that there is a crisis. And when there is a crisis, then regardless of the number of vouchers that have been given recently, we will give a voucher. I think that's all I can helpfully contribute.
No, that's great. Thank you, David. I'm going to be a bit cheeky and ask if we could have one more speaker, just because I think it's really useful to hear different people's experience of the last year, what projects they're working on, any needs they have. They'll hopefully understand why I went through the first few slides at breakneck speed, just so we could get as many people in as possible. Shaista Mumtaz from Cambridge Citizens Advice Bureau. I did see your name before. Would you be able to provide maybe our last update, and definitely, if you're possible, keep it short, just because we'll run slightly over, but I'd love to hear from you if you're here. Are you able to speak, Shaista?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, can hear you now. Brilliant.
Apologies for that. Yes, technology. Yes, I've just joined Cambridge Citizens Advice as an energy advisor. And again, by everybody else, as we are seeing and hearing a lot of people just making, even though the prices are supposed to be coming down, people are struggling still. And we are hearing a lot about people wanting grants. A lot of people are in debt. They're choosing whether to go to, eat or heat. So, which is really tough. And we are obviously finding people who are working. It's not the people on the benefits, which is to surprise, and they don't want to receive help out there. And so it's a barrier to asking for help, because they think that is people perhaps on universal credit on benefits would be eligible for it. So yeah, it really is a tough one to deal with. And the work NEA does, it's I really do appreciate it. It's helps us a lot, helps us to kind of move forward and help our clients best. So yeah, so whenever I can, I always attend webinars. Yes, to keep in touch with it. That's all. Yeah, so thank you. you do a good job.
Thank you. I'll take that on behalf of us all, shall I? That's great. I think everyone loves to hear Matt's policy update, and we actually, thank you for that. We have managed to do 8 updates, brilliant updates from people across the sector, and we're only a minute late. So Matt, your policy update, everyone is keen to see. Are you happy to share your own slides?
Yes, I'll just check that I can, for I have to unmute a load of things there.
Yeah, no worries.
Hopefully you can see that. I can only see your face, Molly, so if you say,
Yeah.
if you nod, then brilliant. Okay, so hi everyone. As Molly said, I'm Matt. I'm the head of policy and public affairs at NEA. What I want to do today is give a bit of an update on what's happening in terms of policy landscape in fuel poor households and what's coming up. Before I get into the specific things, I just wanted to sort of go through how we go about looking at policy. And through consultation with our own policy and advocacy team, but also broader NEA staff and our supporters, we've sort of come up with 3 themes that we focus on when it comes to policy, because there's lots and lots of things that interact with fuel poverty, but we think these are the 3 main ones where we can have the most impact. One is around people, so supporting fuel poor households through the energy crisis. This has primarily been about trying to get financial support to households, and last winter that included the energy price guarantee and energy bill support scheme, so billions and billions of pounds getting out the door. We're hoping to replicate, maybe not at that scale, but more targeted support this winter. The second is homes and about achieving a fair and affordable transition to net zero. We see as a charity decarbonising homes and in particular insulating homes as the sustainable route out of fuel poverty. And it's really important that net zero works to do that, but also that net zero doesn't work against fuel poverty, so that fuel poor households aren't disproportionately fronting the cost for net zero. So we work within all of that to try and achieve that fair and affordable transition. And the third pot we work in is about market frameworks. So looking at overarching market policy and regulatory frameworks and making sure they work in the interests of fuel poor households. So Ofgem doing lots of work rejigging the market at the moment, whether it's to do with prepayment meters and forced installations, whether it's changing how the price cap works, or something broader like the government looking at a social tariff. We'll look to make sure they happen in a way that really helps our clients. What I'm going to do today is, instead of go through individual policy developments like I might have done in the past if you've been at these forums, I'm keen to look at these themes in blocks to try and convey what's happening, what has happened recently with these 3 themes, and what we think is coming up, and therefore what NEA is going to be doing about it. So in terms of people and supporting fuel poor households through the crisis, the big recent developments are really around how the pricing has changed. So we have a price cap that's now at £2,070 for the typical household, but government energy support has broadly ended. So the EPG is no longer sort of in play, and the energy bill support scheme has ended. So we all got 400 quid over winter, but that's now stopped. In total, that means that the effective price right now is very similar to the effective price over the winter. And although wholesale prices have come down significantly because that government support has dropped off, it's looking like the effects of energy price in total haven't really changed. That's important going into winter as well. When we speak to analysts, they say that price will be around about this level over winter. So if we think about last winter being really, really difficult for our clients, it's very likely that the winter coming up without substantial support from government will be equally difficult. Sticking on the energy bill support scheme for a second, just wanted to call out that as of the last data set that was released, the proportion of that scheme that was going to legacy prepay customers, so those customers that were getting vouchers instead of getting automatic credit on their accounts, it was much harder to make sure that those households were benefiting from the scheme. And as of that last data set, about 20% of those vouchers have not been redeemed. That was about, I think that data was released almost a month ago now, so we're due the last tranche of data. The deadline has now passed for that scheme, so we can't do anything about that now. But any underspend will go back to HMT, to the Treasury, and it looks like it's going to be about £100 million that's going to go back to Treasury. So that's a huge amount of support that was earmarked for very vulnerable customers that hasn't been redeemed, and is now lost, unfortunately. But I'll get on to what we might do about that in a second. We have income supports continuing for those households that are in the social security system, with those who are on means tested benefits getting £900 extra during this year, households with disability benefits getting £150 extra, and a doubling of the winter fuel payment essentially for people who are eligible for that. But that's extra income for people, and the cost of living is not just an energy issue. Essentials across the board have increased substantially. We know food is inflating quite seriously at the moment. So that income support is being defrayed across lots of different essentials. That is welcome. It's really good that people can spend the money where they want, but it means that it doesn't necessarily go to warmth. So that income support, we think, is relatively ineffectual in solving fuel poverty. Not least because 1/3 of fuel poor households aren't in the security system, social security system at all, and therefore aren't receiving that support in any way. Should say that at the current prices, we think across the UK, 6.6 million households are in fuel poverty, paying 1/10% of their income towards their energy. So that's 2.2 million fuel poor households not getting support, which is very worrying. So what's coming up and what we're going to do? We want to make the case for more targeted support this winter, specifically for energy. And when we do find out that underspend on that EBS scheme, which we think will be about £100 million, we'll be campaigning specifically on that underspend, but there's other bits of underspend as well, to go towards the most vulnerable energy customers. It was absolutely wrong that prepaid customers missed out on that support, and it should go back to them, in our opinion. We'll be campaigning for a social tariff to ensure that low-income households can access an affordable price for energy. This is something that the government committed to putting in place, social tariff or similar, by April 2024. We're expecting that they will consult on that at some point soon. I think that there may have been there's a meeting ongoing at the moment that colleagues are in, where we may have had some news on that. It might have been bad news, unfortunately. It might be delayed, but we are going to be pushing for the government to put that in place, as they said they would. We're also, beyond financial support, we'll be working with organisations and suppliers and everyone else to make sure that they've got the broader support available, whether it's having call centres up to scratch, or whether it's working with the health service to make sure public health is well aligned to the needs of fuel poor households over the winter. We will be doing all of that stuff around the edges too. Moving on to homes and achieving a fair and affordable transition to net zero, we have had some positive recent developments. So firstly, we have the Great British Insulation Scheme, which is broadly positive. That's been announced. It's not quite made its way through the Parliament yet, so I don't think it's active, but we expect it to be active before summer recess. And this is a scheme that funds single measures essentially for households, where 20% of the scheme is ring-fenced for fuel poor households or low-income households, and the rest of the scheme is available to a much larger cohort based on council tax banding. So I think it's council tax band A to B, and having an EPC of I think D or worse. So much bigger cohort of homes that can access that scheme, but it does include quite a few higher income homes and lots and lots of middle income homes. We would always welcome more money for energy efficiency, but there are a couple of significant issues with this scheme as we see it, which we'll be tracking. The main one is that the part of the scheme that isn't ring-fenced for low-income households assumes that there will be a customer contribution of 10% of the cost of the measure. And that, we think, basically means that low-income households and even many middle-income households that are struggling just won't be able to afford to take part in that scheme, and that realistically the brunt of the larger part of that scheme will go towards more affluent households, which is disappointing. Compounding that is that the way this scheme is funded is through energy bills, which is quite regressive. That coupled with this problem that we expect more affluent households to get quite a lot of the scheme, results in a bit of a transfer of wealth from low-income households who pay for it through their bills to high-income households who receive the benefit of it. We will be working with the organisation delivering it to try and make sure that low-income households access as much as it is possible, but we are a bit disappointed with the policy design, unfortunately. Separately, we have had more money allocated as promised to local authorities and housing associations to deliver the Home Upgrade Grant and the Social Housing Decarbonisation Fund. So this isn't really new money, it's just allocation of getting that money out the door, really, of money that was already promised. These are schemes that we quite like. They are locally led, they have relatively high cost caps, they're well targeted at low-income households. They seem to work quite well. Obviously, there's bits of them that could work better, but we're finding at the moment that these schemes, the centrally funded schemes delivered locally, are working a bit better than Eco4. Government has announced that it will look to consider how levies are placed on energy bills. So this is seen by advocates, particularly of electrification of heat. There's quite a big problem at the moment. The way we pay for lots of energy policy is through levies on bills, so increasing bills to pay for things like new renewables, for the warm home discount, for eco, for the Great British Insulation Scheme. Most of those levies are placed on the electricity bill, and that's because everyone pretty much has an electricity meter, and therefore they're trying to levy those costs on the population. Some people say that means that, and they're right on this, that means that the price is artificially high for electricity, and therefore it makes running of heat pumps artificially costly. And if we want people to take up heat pumps, which government does, we need to reduce that burden on electricity bills. So government has said that it would look at how to do this. And there's some inherent risks for fuel poor households that we're keeping an eye on here. And the main one is the instinct of many organisations would be to move those levies completely onto the gas bill, to make sure that gas is more expensive and to incentivise people to move away from gas and towards electricity, which is a reasonable thing to do if you have just net zero in mind. But when you think about fuel poor households, most of which use gas to heat their homes, and almost all of which have no agency to move away from gas, they can't afford to do it, it will just be placing an extra burden on their heating bills, which is worse in our perspective than placing a burden on their electricity bills, because we really, really don't want people to ration their heat. And we know that for low-income households, the higher the price, the more the rationing. So this is a bit of a concern for us, and we're working with green NGOs, other charities to make sure that any rebalancing is done as fairly as possible. We are actually in favour of trying to reduce the electricity cost to make heat pumps more favourable for fuel poor households, but it has to be done a fair way. We've also got the government debating whether or not to tighten energy efficiency standards for landlords. So at the moment, landlords have to meet an energy efficiency standard of EPC E in all of their properties and have to spend £3,500 to do so. But a couple of years ago, the government consulted on extending that to get to EPC C by 2028. We haven't had a response from the government on this yet, although we know that there's lots of sort of chatter in cabinet about whether they should do this and how they could do it. And we've been putting pressure on through the energy bill legislation that's going through Parliament at the moment to get amendments down that would put that in law and to test the government's resolve on this. And this is a really big priority for us this year to try and get those standards tightened, because without having regulation to make landlords reach EPCC by 2028, rented accommodation just won't meet it. Landlords will not have enough incentive to do so. We need sort of both a carrot and a stick approach. So what's coming up? We'll be making the case for fuel poverty schemes, including the Great Rich Legislation scheme, to be targeted at fuel poor households. That extends to our work going a bit into the medium term with manifestos, and we're working with all political parties to help shape their manifestos so that there's commitments in there for specific fuel poverty schemes when it comes to insulating homes. We'll be working with UK officials, government officials, to ensure that the current schemes work as well as possible. We're well aware that Eco4 is not working to its potential at the moment, so we're joining up with green NGOs to brief officials on how that can be improved, what tweaks can be made. We're expecting a consultation over the summer on that. As I said before, we'll be ensuring that we don't have this rebalancing of levies in a way that's unfair for fuel poor households. And when it comes to our work on the private rented sector, something that we're looking to do to support our advocacy is building up of case studies of private renters. So where we have landlords that have proactively upgraded their properties to a really good standard, we want to hear about that and the benefits that's had for both the tenant and landlord. But we also want to hear from tenants about their experience where they're in really poor accommodation, and be able to convey that to policymakers as well. So the last bucket is market frameworks. So ensuring the overarching market policy and regulatory frameworks work in the best interests of our clients. And there's lots and lots going on here, but I picked out some of the main things. Ofgem consulting on making more changes to energy pricing, which includes how debt is approached in the price cap. So Ofgem instinctively think that there's a sort of a polluter pays principle, whereby if a group of customers cause a cost to suppliers, that group should be on the hook for paying for it. So they instinctively think, for example, that as prices have gone up and therefore debt has gone up, those groups that incur that debt should pay the most towards any price cap increases that they put in, so that suppliers can finance that debt. And Ofgem do unfortunately legally have to increase the price cap in some way to deal with any increased debt allowance or debt costs that suppliers face. Our concern there is always that if you place those costs on those households who are most likely to incur a debt, you're just going to create more problems for those households. And there's a sort of an injustice in it, but it's also economically silly to increase the cost of those households who are falling into debt. It will only perpetuate more debt in the market. So we're working with Ofgem as to how they might take that forward. And the most recent development there has actually come after I've written this slide, and that's that Ofgem are not looking to increase the debt allowance and the price cap at the moment for standard credit customers, which is something they were threatening to do. We also have Ofgem looking at pricing differentials for different payment types. So they've been told by the government to try and reduce the prepayment premium, but they're also looking into potentially reducing the premium that standard credit customers face in the market. So at the moment, the prepaid premium is actually zero because the government is paying the difference, which is fantastic. That's until April 2024, where we want from them Ofgem to sort that premium out. But for standard credit, I think there's £150 premium that those households face. And standard credit customers, as a reminder, are those households that pay for their bills on receipt of bill by cash or cheque. So particularly vulnerable households, often elderly, across a number of metrics, are more vulnerable than direct debit customers. They pay more for their energy. We've asked Ofgem to try and reduce that differential, and they're looking into it. We have new voluntary agreements regarding the forced installation of prepay meters, and I've got another slide doing a bit of a deeper dive into that in a second. And Ofgem are consulting on improving customer service. So it came up in the conversations earlier that it is hard to get through to suppliers at the moment, and we're finding that our advisors are waiting. If you add it up in aggregate over the year, it's days and days and days on just for suppliers to answer the phone, and that's meaning that we can help fewer people. But it also means that when individuals, when people are trying to get through to sort their own problems out, they're having to wait. And that time they're waiting on the phone isn't free, and the cost of that time runs into the tens of millions. So it's really important that Ofgem are doing this, and part of that we hope will be to reduce call wait times. So what's coming up? We'll be continuing to make the case for reducing those payment differentials. It's really, really important thing for us. We're pushing Ofgem to take the voluntary agreement into the license that we have in prepay that I'll run through in a second. And actually they have now consulted on taking that into the license, which is good. And we will be trying to ensure that energy customers don't pay over the odds for the cost of debt in the price cap. The most recent thing Ofgem are trying to do there is increase the cost of debt that prepay customers pay, because suppliers have told Ofgem that they're giving lots of support credit out to prepay customers, and prepay customers don't always pay it back. So they need to finance that bad debt. We think that potentially there's an argument for that, but we need to be really careful that people aren't paying over the odds for that, and actually that we're not piling more cost into those households who are indebted. So I'm going to do a bit of a deep dive on forced prepay. So we have this new voluntary agreement that came after lots of investigations into poor practice on the forced installation of prepayment meters. Ofgem have negotiated this, and as part of it, the forced installation of prepayment meters has been paused. And as we understand it, that shouldn't have been recommenced as of yet, as per this agreement. And just as a note, Ofgem are now consulting on taking this into the license to make it enforceable. So at the moment, this is a voluntary agreement, no fines if they don't do it, a lot of reputational risk if they don't adhere to this, but no financial detriment. Once it's in the license, which we're expecting to go through in the autumn before winter, if suppliers break this, they will face financial harm. So we are splitting this into 4 different boxes. So we have new rules for pre-installation, where it's really clear now that involuntary prepay must be a last resort, that multiple contact attempts by a range of methods must be made, not just calling, not just texts, but a range of methods to suit the customer. And really, really importantly, we have installs being new smart meters as a default. We know that old legacy prepayment meters are really rubbish, huge detriment caused by people having those meters, whereas smart meters are much better, allow you to get back into credit mode, allow you to switch supplier much more easily. That's a really, really positive thing from us. The most important box on this is the exemptions from the process. So Ofgem have now defined a high risk group that are completely exempt from installs, which includes elderly people, very young households, those on certain medical conditions, and they should never ever be put through the forced prepay process. And then we have a broader medium risk group, which includes also elderly people. So in the high risk group, it's over 85s. This broader medium risk group is over 65s. We have other health conditions, like broader health conditions in there as well, that aren't as sharply impacted by being disconnected, but still impacted. And this medium risk group is exempt if they're likely to self-disconnect, which is basically most households who are going through that forced prepay process. This means that quite a lot of households are now completely exempt from forced prepay, and we were pretty pleased with the groupings of this. It's not perfect, but it is hard for Ofgem to get this perfect because their statutory duty is to make sure that suppliers are financeable, and the more people that they exempt from this process, the less financial suppliers are. So they've got a balance, and we think that they probably took quite a bit of risk in having quite a big group that were exempt from the process. Next, we have on-site requirements, so things like having a site welfare visit, and installation teams being appropriately trained, certain expectations on their behaviour. We've got the need for sort of body cams and audio recording, so Ofgem can audit what's happening on site, which is really good. Last but not least, we have new rules post-install. So things like the meter being preloaded with credit, so there's not a self-disconnection immediately, more aftercare to better monitor top-ups and consumption and self-disconnections, and very, very positively, households, once they've cleared their debts, have to be offered to be moved back to credit mode if debt is cleared. So that, coupled with the smart as default, is very powerful. It means that very quickly, if you've cleared your debt, you're on a smart meter, you should be offered to be remotely switched back to credit mode very quickly, and that's what we want from this process. I think we might have a chat in groups about this later, but I might be wrong about that. Okay, so what else is happening? So we have a new select committee established for the new department, which is Department of Energy Security and Net Zero, with Angus McNeil chairing the committee, and he's been an advocate of ours in Parliament for a while. So that's really good. We're engaged with helping shape their initial agenda, and I'm really pleased to say they've got 2 inquiries that we've sort of presented to them as possibilities, and they're taking them forward. One is around the support for this winter. They're going to do an inquiry ahead of whether the department and Ofgem are really well prepared for this winter coming, and they've got one on decarbonising heating as well, which we think is really important. And the next thing is the review of the electricity market arrangements, which is looking at how the wholesale market works. We wouldn't usually get involved in the wholesale market, but some of these impacts do trickle down to the household level, and will impact fuel poor households. So we're remaining engaged with it, and there's 2 things really that we're keeping an eye on. One is this concept of locational pricing. So at the moment we have sort of locational pricing where different regions pay different amounts in the price cap, but this would look to make locational pricing much more local, whereby it could be that different adjacent streets pay quite different prices depending on what generation is near them and how the network under the ground is working. We think that's potentially quite unfair, creating a postcode lottery. So we're tended to disagree with that approach. And on the other side of things, this will look at whether households can provide flexibility to balance the grid. So this winter just gone, we had a bit of a trial from National Grid to see if they could ask people to turn down their usage at certain peak times to help the grid out. Lots of people engaged with that, and it was quite successful, but fuel poor households and low income households didn't. We think that's likely because they were already really rationing their demand and had nowhere to go with that. So we have to think about within this process how we can bring low income households into it so they can benefit from these sorts of things. It might be difficult for those demand turned down services where we're asking people to use less energy, because we don't really want fuel poor households to use less energy in many instances. But there might be instances in the future where National Grid or local DNOs want households to use more energy because there's a surplus on the system. And we're thinking about whether you could ring fence that for fuel poor households where they get access to low cost energy at those times when it would help the grid to use more. So we're considering all of this, but we've got a consultant thinking about this at the moment, and we'll remain engaged on it. Last slide from me is this timeline. So over the summer, we're expecting some consultations on different things, maybe a social tariff, maybe the rebalancing of energy levies on bills. We're expecting the new Great British Insulation Scheme to go live as well. As we get to autumn, we'll get the winter price cap announced. We'll hopefully get this prepayment agreement into the license, and we'll go through the party conference process as well, where manifestos will become really important because the principles of them will be agreed at party conferences. Then in spring, we're hoping for the implementation of a social tariff, as the government have said they would do, and we'll be really getting into election mode, preparing for that, putting our own manifesto out. Could be as early as May 2024, but you know, if you look at political analysts, they're saying more likely to be autumn 2024. That's my slides done. I'm more than happy to answer any questions if we have time, or if people want to get in touch separately, I can do so via email.
Yeah, we we're running right up to the wire, but do ask questions because we can always shift things around. And I think, yeah, it's a good opportunity if you have any.
I have a question, please, Matt. Sorry, I did message you, but I'll ask it anyway. The prepayment advice, is that available to social tenants?
The prepayment advice. Sorry, what did you mean by that?
Well, where you've got the services you're offering on prepayment meters, I wonder, is that to all tenures, or is
yeah, everything I've mentioned in my presentation. So the code of practice on the forced installs and all that sort of stuff was all 10 years.
Okay, thank you.
Hi Matt, I've got a question. When the Great British Insulation Scheme comes out, could you do a briefing for us all on all those people that are like go to NEA newsletters, because it would be so good, especially as I'm going to be running training frontline workers in the autumn.
Yeah, we can do something like that. We can do a bit of a members webinar or something. And we've got my policy analyst in my team has been all over it, as you can imagine. So so we'll do a bit of joint effort on that. But that's a really good idea. Very keen to do that.
It doesn't have to be a webinar, it could just be an email with all the information, but it'd be super helpful.
Okay. Well, we'll definitely do a webinar. We'll definitely do a written briefing. If people do want a webinar, let us know.
Thanks.
That's a self membership if I ever heard of one. Well, we have free and supporting memberships as well as business memberships, everyone. Has anyone else got any questions? Or if not, we'll take our break.
Sorry, Matt, there was a question in the chat from Renee Barlow from the Trussell Trust. It says, will we get slides as well as the recording? Because she found it very useful and informative.
I presume so. I don't know what, I don't know if Brian can answer that question, but yeah, I think the slides go out.
Yeah, the slides will go on the website and the recording I'll put onto YouTube and send a link round.
Okay. So that we do have a bit of a break because I've been slightly cheeky and we've some fab speakers, but we'll be slightly smushed together anyway. So let's go and have a break, and we come back just after 11. Sorry that it's not as long as we wanted. And then we've got 3 great speakers after. So thanks everyone. If you do have any more questions for Matt, pop them in the chat and we can possibly send them off. We're going to save the chat from this meeting anyway, so we can answer them afterwards. But yeah, I'll see you all back here at 11. If you could just make sure your cameras and things are off, and we'll pack up again then. Thanks, Matt. Hi, Stacey. I can't hear you, sorry, at the moment. No, I can't, sorry. Have you got headphones maybe stuck in?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Well, I wouldn't need to use it because I'm not in the office bit. The pod's free now, but maybe my laptop just doesn't want to play ball today.
That's fine. I would have cut something on the fly while you messed around with wires and things. People will be joining kind of in dribs and drabs. Do you want to see if you can share your slides? Just check all the tech and everything's working okay. Or I have got your slides. Would you like me to do them? I just find that sometimes the whole next slide thing kind of ruins your flow a little bit.
Yeah, I have had a practice with it this morning, and there's something going on with my laptop. It's not allowing me to share. If you're able to share my slides, that'd be really helpful.
Yeah, no problem. Let me get them up.
It's
From
always
the
fine with Teams, always temperamental with Zoom. I have no idea why.
No, this is why we have backups ready to go.
Thank you.
You'll just have to next. Just feel free to just tell me what to do. Really. Okay, let's get the share. Welcome back, everyone. I know we'll be back in dribs and drabs, but I think it's best to get started because we've got 3 speakers, and I want to make sure everyone gets a chance to hear from them. Can you see your slides there, Stacey?
Oh, yep, I can see them now. Thank you.
They might be a little bit they're sort of on a branded template, so they might look a little bit off from when you sent them over, but content's all there, promise.
Perfect.
All right. Should we load? Do you want to make a start?
Yeah, absolutely. So my name's Stacey. Hello, everyone. I am a partnership coordinator for Anglian Water. And I'm just wanting to spend a few minutes with you today just to discuss how we look after our customers who might find themselves in vulnerable circumstances. I know that with energy companies, they're often UK-wide. Well, we are regional, so just to put that into perspective, Anglian Water, we look after from just under the Humber Bridge, all the way down to Essex. I think the furthest part is Southend-on-Sea. And then we are out west to Northampton, with the furthest part being Daventry, and then we've got Hartlepool in the mix as well. So we cover a good bit of the country. Next slide, please. So we have lots of ways to support our customers in vulnerable circumstances that come under practical support as well as financial assistance, but it's encompassed under the umbrella term of water care. So if we look at our practical assistance first, next slide, please. So from time to time, some of our customers will need a little bit of extra support, and that's exactly why our Priority Services Register exists. It helps us look after a wider range of customers, from those living with a disability to those with a long-term serious illness, or maybe they're experiencing things like life changes or even struggling with their mental health. When a customer signs up, it just gives us visibility of their needs, and that means that we can be more mindful during our engagements with them and ultimately give them a better experience with us. And in terms of identifying and supporting customers in vulnerable circumstances, this year we're the leading water and sewage company for the amount of households that we're supporting through the Priority Services Register. But we don't want to stop there. We're able to do things like make our bills more accessible, so we can change the format, so whether our customer would like them in Braille or bills in large print, audio bills, or even bills on a different colour background, we can absolutely do that as well. Or maybe they'd like a little bit more of a tailored service in that instance, where one of our members of staff give them a call, let them know their bill is being produced, and then talk them through the charges. We can absolutely do that as well, and that's a completely free service. Then we're also able to help in the case of an emergency. So should the worst happen and a customer's water supply be interrupted, we're able to prioritise those signed up to the register, get into contact, let them know how long their water will be off for. And it might be that they're not home at the moment and it isn't causing them an issue, or it might be that they are home, they can't get out at the moment, and in that case we'll deliver bottled water directly to their door. And again, that's a completely free service as well. Then we have things like our nominee scheme, which we offer as a priority service register. And this just enables customers to nominate a trusted friend or a family member to speak to us on their behalf. And it just really leaves them with peace of mind that their account's being looked after by someone that they trust, and gives them one less thing to worry about. That's often helpful if our customers are struggling with mental health, or there's been a cognitive diagnosis, or even if they're just setting up home for the first time. I remember when I got my first place, council tax was a bit of a shocker for me. Then there's other things that we offer in that priority register as well, things like our password scheme. So with scams and frauds being growing issues worldwide, often scammers will impersonate companies such as ours to gain access into our customers' homes. And that's why we encourage our customers to leave a password, especially for those who just like that extra layer of security. And something that you can share with the people that you know, that is, if we ever have to visit our customers' homes or give them a call over the phone, we'd never introduce ourselves as being from the water board, because that no longer exists. It went like 40 years ago after privatisation. Although if you ask my granddad where I work, he would tell everyone the water board. So if anyone does use that phrase water board, we want our customers to close the door or hang up the phone straight away. And then we've got other services within that too, such as helping the customer to read the meter. We can communicate in the customer's preferred language. And then we also have knock and wait as well. And what that means is if we have visibility of the household needs, we can put knock and wait into place. So unlike the Amazon man who will knock and run off with your parcel, our engineers would know that you need a little bit of extra time to get to the door, and so they would wait that much longer. Similarly, if we have to call the house, we'd know to ring twice. And again, that's often helpful if there's a mobility issue in the household, or even families with young children. In the middle of a nap change, it can be a bit of a panic when the doorbell goes. So within that, there's quite a few services that we have to offer our customers. We just need to know the dynamics of the household to make sure that we can support. Next slide, please. And in terms of affordability, we've worked really hard on our affordability package, and now more than ever, really, given the increase in things like fuel and food and just about everything else. At the end of last year, we launched our biggest ever support package for our customers of £135 million. And to put that into perspective, the previous financial year, we had a pot of £65 million in our affordability pot. So it's doubled to keep up with demand. And to tap into this, we just need our customers to complete an extra care assessment. And we've tried to make this as accessible as possible to everyone. So you can complete it over the phone with someone like me. You can complete it online if you're that way inclined. And there's also a physical form you can fill in. I'm not a huge fan of the physical form. They can be a little bit lengthy. A 10-minute conversation is all that's really needed. And we try and work on a first-time resolution. So our extra care assessment, we've developed it in partnership with Policy and Practice. And it looks at everything we can support the customer with, from things like discounted tariffs. There's one that can give up to 50% off the customer's ongoing charges. Then we've got things like debt forgiveness schemes, one where we can match pound for pound what the customer's paying in to help them get back on track that bit quicker. And then we have things like affordable payment arrangements, payment holidays and payment breaks. A lot of our customers aren't aware that if you're having a long time in hospital or you're in respite care, come and let us know, because we can freeze the charges, so there won't be any charges whilst you're not at home. So we really look after the water account, but then what we do as well is we take a holistic approach. So we'll look at everything we can do to maximise the household's overall income. And as far as I'm aware, we're one of the only utility companies to complete in-house income maximisation. And we do it because we know just how difficult it is to disclose that you're struggling. So we'll look at everything the customer can claim, everything from unclaimed benefits that they might not be aware of. Often for our older customers, it's things like attendance allowance and pension credit, right the way through to free school meals for the kids if they're eligible, or blue badges, or maybe there's a warm homes grant in the area. Anything we can do to shave some money off their water bill and help bring in extra finances into the household, that's where we want to be at. I spend a lot of my time out and about in the community, and one of the things that comes straight at me is, what's the catch? While there is no catch, unlike gas and electric suppliers, you can't pick or choose your supplier with Anglian Water. We hold a bit of a monopoly. If you fall within our region, the pipes belong to us. We are your supplier. So that's why it's important for us to do the right thing. Next slide, please. But what we have found is that not everyone is aware of this help and support. I think sometimes if you're in a privileged position to have a direct debit ticking away in the background, you only think about your water account when there is an issue, and we don't want to be reactive, we want to be proactive. So we have found that collaboration really is key. This slide's a little bit out of date. It says that we work with around 150 trusted partners, but actually it's more in the region of 200 now, and they're from varying sectors such as public health, local authorities, charities, other utility companies as well. And together, we're making sure that we can look after a wider range of customer. And we're learning and implementing positive changes from our partners as well. For instance, we did a great piece of work with an organisation called Leeway. They're a domestic abuse charity. And from that, we recognise we would never want a debt to be a tie to a perpetrator. So if one of our customers has left in a crisis and there is something to evidence that, like a referral from a third-party agency or even a police crime reference number, what we can do is separate the accounts, we can wipe the debt in its entirety, and then we can support that customer to start again through our extra care assessment, signposting to what benefits they may be eligible for. And then through our priority services register, we would make sure we put things like knock and wait into place. Maybe they're checking out the window before they answer the door, or I can never get my teeth around this, additional presence preferred. It's like it or not, water industry is dominated by big burly men, and that might be a little bit triggering for someone who's left that type of relationship. So we'd let them know they're in the area in case they wanted someone to come and stay with them. And we make it easier for our partners to engage with us. So we'll give them direct contact details. So there's no robots, press 1 for this, 2 for that. They get you telephone numbers get you straight through to a person like me. But ultimately, and in my mind, most importantly, we're really trying hard to reduce the customer's effort in getting all the support that's out there, because there is lots of support, all the great schemes that you're all working on. Sometimes it's just knowing where to go to access them, and that's where we're hoping to bridge the gap a little bit. So I know we're up against the time a little bit today and I've waffled on. So just next slide, please, and then I'll open up to any questions if anyone may have any. Some of the things you can ask yourselves, when you're supporting someone, if they would benefit from our services are, are they struggling with their finances at the moment? Would they benefit from some extra time to get to the door? Would they struggle in an instance of interruption to supply? And if the answer to any of those are yes, then please do get in contact with us and we'll be able to support the customers from there. So that's really the end of my presentation there. I'm happy to take any questions if anyone may have any.
Not waffly at all, that's perfect time. Does anyone have any questions for Stacey? Just check the chat. Oh, it said this. Someone said the slides are out of sync. We'll make sure we send the proper slides. Apologies, I didn't realise.
Hello.
Hi, Ivan.
Hi there.
Hiya. Hi, Stacey. I'm really pleased that you are here today because I work for Citizens Advice in East Suffolk, Lowestoft, and we had really good cooperation with Anglian Water. With one of your colleagues here locally. Unfortunately, this was now taken away from us, and I was wondering if there would be something which we can put like a cooperation, because it was really useful when we had that one point of contact rather than going through the call centers to deal with the clients. It was very helpful that when we spoke to Terry, he literally just did exactly what you just said, how it was, and it worked absolutely brilliantly because it was perfect journey for our clients, and not only it was looked into the account and see the areas and things like that, but what he was able to do was also look into if there was a like high court enforcement. He was able to put that on hold without any additional going through, jumping to the hoops and sending 7 emails back and forth. So it would be really, really helpful if we could get back to that kind of relationship.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's something that we are striving to do at the moment. I myself, as a partnership coordinator, I've tried to reach out to all the citizens' advice in the Anglian Water region. Being completely transparent, direct contact details aren't easy to come by. There's been lots of filling in generic forms, and I have presented to quite a few of the citizens' advice in our region and trying to strike up that relationship. So if you would be happy to leave me your email address, then I can get back to you, and that's something we can look at setting back up.
Absolutely.
Perfect. Thank you.
I'm really looking into Essex and Suffolk Water as well, because that's another company which we would really profit and from having partnership with. So if there is anybody on the forum from Essex and Suffolk Water, I'm just fishing now. Thank you.
Let me know if you do struggle with that, because whilst we are separate companies, often Essex and Suffolk are our customers, a water supplier, but because they don't have recycling facilities, we are always a sewage provider. So it will be that there'll be someone who does a similar role to me, and I might be able to get their contact details for you. So keep me in the loop if you're still struggling there.
Lovely,
I'll see if I
thank
can
you.
support.
And one more, and I won't keep you too much longer, I promise. Is it true that Anglian Water will be taking over some of the Essex and Suffolk Water areas in Suffolk?
In terms of what, supplying or billing?
Supplying, yeah, because obviously where we are, Essex and Suffolk is the fresh water, and Anglian Water is the sewage. But recently I heard on the grapevine that Essex and Suffolk Water are going to go in the background, and Anglian Water will be taking over for the fresh water as well.
I've not heard that myself, so I couldn't really comment on that. Bill wise, my background is the billing contact centre, so I'm a little bit biased. It would be my absolute utopia if Anglian Water took over that, because whilst it's I would always say, you know, just to let you know, you have two providers, because not everyone has always come from that background where they've got two providers. Sometimes that message can get a little bit lost, and then it's when our customers receive a bill further down the line, they went to where. So it does make sense that there is just one point of contact. I don't know if that's something that's been looked into, or as you said, but I can certainly find out a little bit more.
Perfect. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for your questions, Ivana. I love that you came with an agenda to the meeting. You get one. That's exactly what these are for, that people connect with each other and getting answers and solutions. So brilliant. Stacey, that was great, and you kept perfectly timed. But what I'm going to do is move on to our next speakers, because it's my fault. I've crushed us all into this hour. But if anyone does have any more questions, are you happy to keep an eye on the chat for anything that comes up for you, Steve?
Yeah, of course.
Brilliant, thank you. So we're going to go to Peter Chisnell now, who's a trustee for Inform. He has a brilliant title to his section, Trials and Tribulations of Setting Up the Climate Emergency Centre. Peter, as discussed, I'll try and keep you to time. So after 15 minutes, I'll just pop my head up and let you know, just so you've got time to wrap up and do any questions. Is that all right?
That's fine. Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. It's a low carbon presentation. I haven't got any slides, so you'll just have to put up with me for a quarter of an hour or so just speaking. And thanks for inviting me. I think it's the first NEA meeting I've been since post-COVID. I used to go to the in-place meetings when they were at West Suffolk House in Bury St Edmunds, but that was years ago. But anyway, by the by. Yeah, I'm Peter Chisnell. I am an environmental health officer. I work part-time for Baber and Mid Suffolk councils, and in the rest of my week I do lots of things which I won't bore you with, but one of them is that I am a trustee of Inform. Bit background to Inform. The name is the Corruption of Environmental Information, so it's an environmental information charity. We're based in Colchester, although we do cover wider Essex, and we even put our foot over the boundary occasionally as well to neighbouring counties. Our basis is that we do carry out some environmental based projects ourselves, but we act as a sort of facilitator for other groups in the area as well, and try and help them with their projects. And that could well be funding and things like that. Our major project is the Colchester Eco Festival, which is coming up on September the 2nd, Saturday. If you'd like to come along to that, please do. It's a free festival, and last year we had about 5,000 people in the day. We are self-funded through grants that we applied for and donations. We don't have any source funding. Anyway, going back to the subject, which is our Climate Emergency Centre. In early 2022, we were contacted by a letting agent in Colchester who they had a landlord who had a portfolio of empty retail premises in Colchester. Obviously, the lockdown and the near recession has meant that retail has taken a hammering, and lots of tenants had left these premises void, and he was looking at someone to take them over. That wasn't out of a goodwill from the landlord's point of view. If you're not aware that if charities take over premises, then they pay the non-domestic rates at a charity tariff. And this was the interest that the landlord had. If he could get a charity involved, he would pay the rates bill under the charity tariff and would save a few £1,000s a year through doing that. There are about 12 empty premises on offer. We looked at about 3 of them, but only one of them really struck a chord, and we sort of expressed interest in it. It was actually a co-joined premises, 2 shops together in a retail area close to Sainsbury's in Colchester. And yeah, we were lucky to be offered this premises. It's a 3-year lease with a 28-day notice period where the landlord can claim it back. The area is under redevelopment, going to be redeveloped. The landlord's putting in a planning application, and we're right in the middle of that. But we think, and the landlord thinks, that it'll be 3 years before that gets off the ground. So our idea was, let's have a climate emergency centre. We joined in with a loose grouping of environmental groups in Colchester called the Colchester Climate Alliance. We formed a steering group to get some ideas, and it's sort of formulated from there, really. Through that group, we got a load of volunteers. They redecorated the premises. It's 2 shops side by side, a ground floor and a first floor. One of the shops was a lot easier to do than another. It was originally a cafe, and it was in fairly good repair. Just needed a bit of paint and just a dust and a clean. The other shop has been harder for us to do. There's some major disrepair. There was a leak in the roof. Electricity had been cut off by a previous tenant, and the landlord didn't even know about that. And we've just got him to agree to pay for putting that back onto the mains. So we've actually been running an extension cord from the other premises to that one for all our events. We wanted a name for the hub, and we have quite a good Facebook group called Eco Colchester, 5,000 members, and we came up with 6 suggestions of names, and the one that was chosen was LEAF, L-E-A-F, which stands for Learning, Environment and Action for the Future. Subsequently found out there's another charity called LEAF, so we got in touch with them, and they said, yes, you can use the name as long as you put Colchester in the front of it. So we are Colchester LEAF. We signed a lease around about a year ago, September 22, and yeah, we had to get the place ready. We had our opening event in November 22 with some drinks and nibbles, and it was an art exhibition that went on for about a month, where we invited local artists to use the space as a gallery for art projects linked to the environment, and we had paintings and sculptures and other various forms of art in there for months, and that's a good advert for them as well. Now, over the period since then, it's been used by many local groups for one-off meetings. We've really encouraged any sort of meeting that has a tenuous link to the environment. We've had refugee groups, we had storytelling workshops, poetry nights. And we really encourage the use of workshops if we can. And our idea has been to try and get the wider public involved, because otherwise we're just preaching to the converted. We want to get other people into that centre so we can spread the message to them as well. We've had regular events from film nights. We had a donated projector and we were able to do get some downloaded films and on the environment and do that. We have a monthly repair cafe, very well attended. We have weekly events from linked to sort of repairs. A So Eco, the organisation is called, where they do clothing repairs, they sell cloth and they give advice, and they want to run some workshops. And also we've had what's called a Higgy swap shop as well. That's Higgy as in the Finnish Higgy. And it's where people can bring in clothes and they can swap for other clothes. I think they bring in one and they can get 5 free. So we've had lots of disadvantaged groups coming in and making use of that. We have someone who sells plants in the space. That once that is commercial, they get most of their stock from a nursery who would otherwise throw these plants away. So they're like recycled plants that would otherwise end up on the compost heap. We have done some energy efficiency advice, and that's something we really want to expand. And we do have some permanent exhibits. We ran a TerraCycle through Enform as a project, and we also do some work with Anglian Water, some outreach exhibitions, and we do have a permanent Anglian Water saving exhibition there. The cafe does run on a couple of days a week, and we don't charge for drinks and cakes, but we do ask for a donation sort of thing. We are really limited by the volunteer capacity, and our opening times are about Tuesday, Wednesdays to Saturdays, although we can open on other nights or one-off events. Right, trials and tribulations. Well, some of the problems have been the cost of electricity, which is no surprise to you from a domestic point of view, but from a commercial point of view, we pay a commercial tariff and it's been horrendous. When we started, we were put on the default energy supplier that the landlord had. And we were paying £3 a day standing charge and a horrendous price per kilowatt hour for that. We changed to Scottish and Southern Electricity, 100% renewables, got a good price on them. But now we're actually got a contract with Urban Chain, who are peer-to-peer energy provider, again, 100% renewable. And yeah, we've saved quite a bit of money there. The capital cost of doing the electric works and making the property safe was quite high as well. Because we'd signed the lease, we were responsible for a lot of the disrepair that we didn't spot before then. But yeah, now that the landlords agreed to pay the putting on the electric on one half of the premises, that's been a lot easier. You'd be surprised that the user groups, some of them just do not get on. They're blinkered, they're single issue, and their use is the most important in the site. And if it wasn't for them, we wouldn't have a site to open. But yeah, we put up with that. They have little responsibility, and they don't pay an awful lot for the use of the site as well. So we tend to subsidise that at our own cost. But as I say, we're trying to attract the wider public, and we're putting up with this for the moment. And it really is a social community space. So some of the benefits is we've got lots of goodwill. People who do come into the site really get what we're about and enjoy the message we're putting over. We're in a rundown area of the town. As I say, it's really opening up for redevelopment, and we're trying to keep it running while that's going on. It's a good experience for our volunteers, but we could always do for more volunteers. For example, I volunteer at the Repair Cafe. I'm not an electrician, and I don't like to touch anything that involved with electrics, but we have got a couple of electric and electronic engineers who do that bit, but we need more people. And it's really, a good platform to get our message across, and as a community space, it works well. There is a national grouping of climate emergency centres, and they got some really good resources, and we've used some of their webinars to speak to their legal team about some of our issues, particularly with the lease and with the landlord, and that's been useful. So my advice is, if you are thinking about it, just Google CEC and it'll come up as that grouping. If you are interested in setting up one of these hubs, find a charity who might be able to take advantage of a friendly landlord. Try your letting agents to get to that friendly landlord. And as a last resort, please contact me if no one else can help you. So that's it in a nutshell. So thank you very much.
That's great. Thanks, Peter. Plenty of time there. Has anyone got any questions?
Sorry, I do speak quick. I should have slowed down.
No, I felt the same when I was rushing through the slides at the beginning, but I wanted everyone else to speak freely.
I was wondering, Peter, whether as Suffolk Climate Change Partnership and support officer to community groups, whether I could arrange a visit over at some point.
Yeah, by all means, that'd be fine. Yeah, thanks.
I'll give you a call. You're on internet. Yeah.
Yeah, please do.
Any other questions?
I was just wondering if you've heard of, or you're involved with the community energy projects. I've been approached by someone setting up one in my local area, and whether that could be a solution to the high cost of commercial energy bills.
Yeah, well, I'm not saying we cracked that nut of the commercial energy bill, but we're in a lot better place than we used to. But yes, we one of our volunteers does run the Colchester Community Energy Project, and he's been willing to do some of our energy efficiency advice centres. So yeah, we are aware of that one. Yeah, thank you.
I don't know if you noticed in the chat as well, Peter, but Claire put some information about some linking in Ipswich. I had a question actually, which was, I guess, what's 23-24 winter looking like for the centre? What's planned?
Well, personally, we've got to get some insulation in the loft, so yeah, we have got to do that. Yeah, I'm going to be hopefully making a bid to the Energy Redress Scheme for some outreach community energy advice events, as well as something in the centre. So yeah, we know there's a demand for this service. We had lots of contacts through the Facebook group with regards to that. So yeah, that's something we want to expand on. Yeah. Sorry, I'm looking at the chat. So yeah, I'll if I can't answer it now, I'll try and answer people while the next speaker's on. But yeah, thank you.
Well, all right, perfect. Thanks so much, Peter. I will move on to Claire, because I know she's got a lot of slides, which we'd love to see. Do you want to check everything's okay to share and everything, Claire? And if not, you're way ahead of me.
That's all right. That's all right. Just trying to work out how to put it onto full slide.
Just down on your right hand side, next to the Zoom, should work. So a little bit further along. Next one.
That one?
No, one further along to the right. And then one more.
Oh, there we go. Thank you very much for that. That's helpful. Lovely. Rightio then. So very quickly, Claire Ling from the Community Support Officer of Suffolk Climate Change Partnership. If you haven't heard of what Suffolk Climate Change Partnership is, then on the slides, which there are, as I say, a lot of them, they will be available. So in your own time, there'll be some things that you can have a look at without me using up your precious moments today. But it is an amalgamation of all the local authorities in Suffolk, and I work as their support officer in the communities. So the one thing that I'd like to talk to you today about is a very successful thermal imaging loan project that we did. It started off in July to with an expression of interest being sent out to groups. I do have my colleague Henry Stoddard, who was also involved. If he wants to chip in at any time, please do. And we got 116 submissions of people who were interested in having thermal imaging cameras to be loaned to them for certain lengths of time, and I'll tell you how we calculated that, to use within their communities for obvious I think reasons to yourselves, carbon reduction, to assist with insulation measures to go into homes, to start conversations, and especially to help people who were struggling with their utility bills and the cost of living. So it was great that we had so much interest. We had 50 of those who said that they were local authorities, town and parish council, very happy to have those involved. And the others were made up of 63 community groups or similar, and then 3 individuals that we then linked to groups. And we also, one of the learning is we had 11 who didn't provide sufficient information for us to get in touch with us. So we concentrated on those that did and got back in touch with them to ask them what they would like. So the thermal imaging project was born out of that. We bought 16 cameras. We started off with far less than that, but with demand, we doubled our amount and loaned them to those certain groups who showed expression within the Suffolk communities. And this is just a picture to show you one person handling the cameras, which were designed to put on smartphones. So you can see the size of the phone and the size of the camera at the top there in daylight so that you can see them. We do not use the thermal imaging cameras in daylight as they won't read properly and efficiently. But again, just there, what we are looking for is the range of colours within a property to have a look to see where heat is leaking. If you know where the heat is leaking, then obviously we can do remedies about it. Now, my father was an absolute frugal, to put it in a nice way, and he would do all sorts of remedies at home and know about what he could put in place. Today, we've lost that expertise. People are struggling and don't know where to start. So in one sense, the thermal imaging project was a way for communities to start having conversations together and learn together about what remedies could be put in place and what other support people could be signposted to. So we started off looking for camera hosts. This is one of them. This is our camera host, Nigel. And their job was to have the cameras in and about the communities to keep them safe, look after the equipment, check them over, liaise with us if there was any problems, and to act as a collection and drop-off point. We were hoping that that would mean that they're more accessible and there'd be less travelling involved if they were out and about in the communities. And we did this by looking at the clusters of the expression of interest that we had and placing the cameras where the most community groups were, so they had easy access or could pass them on to one another. That worked really well mostly, and I can go into the what didn't work a bit later as well. So just to give you an idea of the equipment, I won't linger on this, but it's small, it's compact, it's very easy to use. We set about putting an equipment list because it isn't terribly expensive, but at $399 a camera, we didn't want to go and keep losing them, and we wanted to make sure everything was working. And Henry set up these wonderful QR codes to provide some resources for people, and that went into a box with high-vis jackets, the cameras, power packs, and any other information that people needed, and lanyards. So we tried to make it a full package for people, and that was well received. I spoke about allocation, and this is how we allocated. So it was according to the amount of households that a community thought that they would survey. And we specifically asked, and again, somewhere we learned from, that the community groups volunteers would go round and do the surveying and get practice on it, be able to interpret them better with our support, and keep a hold of the cameras so we knew and could track them. The more expertise you are, the quicker the survey is. And in some places, mainly parish councils, they were offering the cameras to individuals, and that's our problem to get out the definition of what we would like volunteers and hosts to do. It's changing the wording that we had and making sure that the understanding between ourselves is a bit more complete next time. These next 3 slides I won't bore you with, but they are a copy of the email that went out to groups. So it had a whole load of resources on it that they could access, some from our Creating the Greenest County website, others that we'd discovered along the way, and also a community toolkit with the posters, articles, a format of a risk assessment, those sorts of things. So we were trying to make it as accessible as possible to the groups and parish councils that were using them. So that's for your information another time. So the data we collected, in all, we had 61 groups borrow those cameras. So there's remembering that there were 16 cameras in 8 different locations. That's equivalent to, and it's an amazing result, 151 weeks of surveying. We were having a look at how many people surveyed, and one group managed to survey 63 in the 2 weeks that they had, getting the amount of volunteers and just strategically and logistically being completely on the ball. And we also want to look at why people didn't get that many surveyed. And as I say, that's something to do with handing them to individuals who only do 1 per night, or not promoting it through different channels. They promoted it well, but maybe not to everyone, and what we could do different with helping advertise and get our wording right. So in excess of 700 homes were surveyed, which meant that there was a lot of conversation had between our community groups and communities. And one of the main benefits people are saying is that conversation starter was just incredible for any other work or any other conversations. I did like the fact that we had a community of houseboats surveyed, which was very interesting and difficult to insulate, and also lots of referrals to Warm Homes Suffolk, which is our HUG scheme and LAD scheme. We did make sure that everybody had access to that on all their evaluation forms, all their agreements, that they had a range of signposting to help people in certain circumstances. So that was a really big intention of ours. What did we survey? Well, we've got camper vans, windows, outside properties was what we recommended. Inside, we did say that wouldn't be under our schedule, but if somebody wanted to give the camera to a householder, they could. But obviously that includes a lot more safeguarding, a risk assessment. And yes, we even had a dog surveyed. So as you can see on this window one, it's the colours we were looking at. So blue is cold, and as you get from yellow to red, it shows that it's hotter, which we can then see where the leakage is happening and help people with their remedies. We did look carefully at where we were locating the cameras, and we found out that half of the county really wasn't well covered. So that gives us an idea to target next time. And we plotted it as well in a visual sense so that we could get a really good idea of who was where the cameras were, and where we need to focus our attention next time. Very useful, those maps. Would they use it, the cameras again? There wasn't a no, but certainly yes and maybe, depending on how much interest they had. And we did have communities where groups showed an interest, but they couldn't find the householders who would like to participate in it. Again, we need to find ways of communicating what we're doing better. Would they recommend the scheme? That's just again to show you that was an outright yes. A scheme that will be tuned to hearing their evaluations, which was a really significant part of what we did, is asking feedback about the process, and also having an evaluation about who and where they were surveying as well. So as a result, we managed to get a bulk buy pilot scheme up and running, where we've got £7,000 to give to 7 communities, and they can help with self-installation of products, and that's a 50% off up to a maximum of 200 help from our part. that we were managed to have an improved relationship with Warm Homes Suffolk and get the word out and promote them. Linking to other insulation schemes, we've heard about those today, and that was really useful for other people in different situations financially and with EPCR and in different banding taxes, and of course our local welfare assistance scheme. And we've also connected with the prepayment advisors, which have come into play just recently, and I've sent the link to that, I think, on chat. We talked about grants and funding. I won't go into that. We managed to get people to think about a retrofit boot camp, and we will do that again next year. We worked closely with Groundwork East. I would highly recommend Groundwork. They're an amazing organisation. And there's Warm Homes again, just the information of what we do for your reading later. Did it involve different conversations on different topics? Well, yes, and an awful lot on climate change, net zero, reducing carbon, and so forth. So that was really interesting, as well as just the energy efficiency of homes. And we've got lots of improvements that we need to go into. The Android wasn't as easy to use as the iOS version. And we learned that maybe that's because there's so many different brands of Android on the market. We know that we're going to get the last year's borrowers to help with this year's, and they want a webinar. We certainly need a camera upgrade. It was difficult with people who didn't have smartphones, so we got a handheld camera as well. And that one very large thing is to help people interpret the images a bit more. We had a webinar from a professional who came in, and I think that was too much. And a lot of people wanted to be professional consultants. And this is about a starter for 10, having a conversation, and then using common sense, i.e. you've got broken window frames or you've got single glazed windows, that sort of thing. We learned to communicate, and I've left that a bit fuzzy because communication is fuzzy, and we've got a lot of lessons. We think we understand what the project's about, but we've learned that other people don't. So that's really vital. What's next? We're going to purchase more, we're going to get an upgrade, we're going to do more webinars, and offer faith communities maybe a borrow of the older cameras for maybe the 6 months over the thermal season. I love that word. I didn't know that until 6 months ago, that phrase. We're going to improve our booking system to give agency to the groups because we had to book it for them due to IT issues. And we're going to recommend that they previous groups from last year target and focus on maybe homes that are struggling with the household bills, in fuel poverty, etc., so that we can help signpost them better to further insulation. Targeting communication. You can have a look at the positive feedback and the things that we've got to improve on. You know, simple things like duplication, make sure that we know who's doing what within our team, get a groups app for connectivity of the groups, and maybe more regular updates. Some people started their surveying in October and April, and of course we just don't know what the weather's going to offer, and you do have to have cold period. It's best done in the dark, and the problem we did have is that you must have the heating on internally for 2 to 3 hours, which is so difficult for many of the families that we were talking through. It's a barrier because they can't heat their home anyway. Why would they want to do it for this? So we've really got to think about that and how we help our households. And I don't know how long I've taken, Molly, but that is my slideshow, and you guys can have a look through that whenever you've got time.
That was, you just proved me right, Claire, that you've got a lot of slides. No, we're at 10:02. There's time for questions. Well done.
Fantastic.
What a brilliant project. Yeah, if anyone got any questions for Claire. Oh, Peter's raised his hand. Very polite.
Peter.
It was polite, wasn't it? Yeah. Hi, Claire.
Hiya.
I've been trying to do this energy redress bid now for about a year.
Yeah.
The getting some thermal cameras was one of my ideas for that, and I've been looking at this types of cameras available. It's interesting you went for the FLIR ones. I've used the FLIR one in the past when they first came out, and yes, it's good for the purposes intended, as you said, but I have real problems with the battery running out quickly. So I hope that's been solved.
We put a battery pack in with it so that people could spend more time out and about. Yep.
Yep. And yeah, I was more looking at the handheld ones, but yeah, there's so many out there. I was going to, well, I might tap into you outside this meeting for the one you went for. But one of the issues was training, and a little knowledge is a dangerous thing. And you're quite right. There are some criteria for using cameras, particularly the difference between inside and outside. And I do like use them inside, but I can appreciate the risk assessment that you need to do there. And that might get around the issue with regard to the fuel poor not being able to heat the house up to it's got to be a 10 degrees C difference between inside and outside. But if you do it inside, then you can see the cold coming in. So it's the inverse of
absolutely
going out.
What we did, Peter, is that we said that households could take the camera inside and put it on their own smartphone. If they didn't have one, they could use the volunteers. And the wonderful thing about the FLIR one is that all the pictures can be saved on the camera roll and then be sent it to email to the householder. So whilst we had people who were helping interpret those pictures, because that's part of the service. Sorry, I've got a puppy barking here and I'm trying not to get you to have that noise. The other thing is, you know, some people were looking at the differentials and they really wanted to target down as engineers or scientists. And we were saying that's not our role. This is the first steps. And the bulk buy from it, you know, has to be self-installed because we don't have again, risk assessment, safeguarding. Community groups are reluctant to put it in for fear of not doing it properly. And that again we need to look at as a result of the thermal imaging, because there are so many people who can't. But likewise, we've got so many places that we could refer them to, but people don't like having others come into their home. So it's really tricky, and we're trying to work on that. If anybody's got any ideas, then please let me know.
Thank you.
Claire, there's a question in the chat from Ivana. It says, if they're still open to individuals, what are the criteria to be considered, and is there any financial implication to the individual? It's
all free, the service. Literally, you know, volunteers come and give their time and then go round. The only ask is that they're around if they possibly can. But because it's outdoors, we could also do it when they're not around. So that's not necessary. It's just making neighbours know that there's going to be trampling on the lawns. As we say, with all the Connected for Warmth, Suffolk Warm Homes, the Great British Insulation Scheme, there's no cost to people if they meet the criteria. The criteria we had was anyone. Anyone can have their house surveyed, as long as it wasn't an individual doing their own home, and that was the only one that they were going to do. We needed groups to have the cameras to aid efficiency, really. It's for those groups who have done it last year. If we could target or focus on areas, and we're actually asking them to say, would you like to twin with an area outside of where you are, if you don't have the people that they think, and we never know who's fuel poor or in fuel poverty, we don't know. So we could link them with communities that are in areas of multiple deprivation. Was that the bulk buy criteria as well? That was for people from 31 to 45,000 to try and target the ones that weren't going to be helped by the schemes, but maybe had a little money spare. Wishful thinking, and that's gone out to 7 of our communities who will start ordering soon.
Yeah, I think Ivana's put thank you in the chat. I think that means that's
Pleasure.
the question.
Pleasure. Okay, thank you.
Does anyone have any last minute questions? I think this has been really useful to see a range of projects, and always, from my point of view, always appreciate seeing what went wrong, because I think it's so easy to present a final product and act as if these things, you know, just set themselves up, and there's the, you know, you never have to learn and retry things.
Yeah, we've also
really,
you're absolutely right, Molly, we've got a lot to learn. It was great. We've also asked the University of Suffolk, who is happily doing an evaluation, on the evaluations that we had handed back from the community group. So that's where I would say, you know, collaboration. If it's not communication first thing, then collaborate as your second.
Well, I will. So this session was recorded, and as a result, we'll also have the chat. It might take me a little while to work through it because obviously I've got to remember what was being said and at what point, but I will try to make it intelligible. And if there are any links that I saw that people made and might have missed, I'll try and link everyone up, because that is the downfall of not doing it in person, but also we want to make sure we still get those benefits being online. All right, I'll share my final few slides before we all head off for lunch then. Can you see slides there?
Yep.
Natasha, can you see slides? Yeah, perfect, thank you. So just to say, obviously we have our training available through NEA. To be honest with you, as soon as we put funded training spots up at the moment, they are going, which we're very happy about. You know, we want people to be using these. I think there is massive capacity growth happening in the sector. So just do be aware that we have funded spots available for frontline staff and for volunteers who are working with people who are in fuel poverty. So do take us up. The best way, and this is, well, it's not a plug and it is a plug, but the best way to know about funded training and to know about other courses that we might create or other products for information sharing is to join our membership. So just as Matt was mentioning before about having breakdowns of policy updates, you know, news on the sector, and also for you as a partner, memberships do get benefits like, you know, you'll get early bird access to events that we might run, or if you've got a job role and you want to make sure it's posted to our network, we can share it in our newsletter. And we do have different types of memberships to support you know, different needs for organizations. So please do, I think Brian posted it in the chat before, but please do have a look at our membership. We do have a support membership that is free. Speaking of events, our annual conference will take place this year, beginning of December, so 4th to the 6th in Leicester Tiger Stadium in Leicester. That's to also commemorate some of the work that we're doing in the city. So there'll be some really interesting updates on that, as well as our grand scale national look. And I don't know if anyone here was able to attend the conference that we ran last year, which was our first in-person conference since the pandemic, but there really was such a feel in the room of finally we're all together. I just saw people, you know, seeing people they hadn't seen for years, and it was maybe a bit lame to say this about work, but it was really, really electric basically. So do have a look at coming along if you can do. And that's it. So you will get an evaluation form. I hope that you think it's, you know, worth the 10 minutes to fill out. Please do, it really helps us. What we'll also do is look at pulling together the slides, the presentations, the recording and the chat separately. It might take a little bit more time to iron those out and make sure that all happens. But first of all, can I also just say as well, thank you to everyone from NEA who has been in the background of this call, squirreling away or presenting or doing little things. And that's it really. Thank you very much for coming.